Continuing the story. You're in lots of trouble. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes when Mum gets home. The look of pleasure on my brother's eyes was plain to see. A cold shiver ran down my spine. My mother was not a person to see the lighter side of the situation. Oh well, you can only die once. I broke away and we ran into the playground, and as we rounded the corner, we both came to a halt at the sight of a gleaming two-tone Bentley convertible. Wow! This was the stuff of childhood dreams. The red leather interior, the polished walnut dashboard, and lots of chrome dials. The bonnet going on and on forever and ever, and topped with a flying B. I ran my hand over the bonnet. It felt very hot and so smooth. Leave it alone! Come on, or you'll be in even more trouble, my brother shouted as he ran out of the big iron gates and towards the lane that ran across the top of the town. I raced after him. Although we lived in the centre of town, it was possible to get home without crossing more than one main road, by using the church graveyard as a shortcut. This was not for the faint-hearted when it was dark, and many a boy had tried to walk through to win a bet, but had always come flying out and down the steps to safety of the well-lit lane. We arrived home hot and sticky. The back door was open, and newly made jam was standing, cooling on the low table, rickety on the cobbles. My grandmother was preparing the vegetables for the evening meal, her arms stripped to the shoulder for action, and her misty glasses on the end of her nose. She looked up. My word, is it that time already? I'm all behind. My brother pushed past me. He's got a letter for Mum from the headmaster. I expect they'll kick him out for drawing dirty pictures. Gran wiped her hands on her apron and reached for the letter, and then thought better of it, then wiped her hands. You'd better put that on the mantelpiece behind the clock. This was the place in the dining room where bills, letters, and any other important documents were put for attention for when my mother returned from her various places of work. Now it really stood out as the only white letter among so many brown ones. I noticed for the first time the marks my sweaty fingers had made on the pure white surface. I now had a long, agonizing wait to receive the punishment, as my mother was not due home for another 2 hours. My gran had cooked a lovely meal, but I could only pick at it, as I was sick with fear, my shirt wet with sweat, and the dining room clock was on overtime. I could actually see the hands moving. The tick-tock was growing louder and louder. I looked at my brother to see if he'd noticed the manic clock as well. He just grinned at me. Not long now. The table was cleared. That's good. Less things for her to hit me with. My mother was well known for picking up the first thing to hand and lashing out at me. And crying was no defence. In fact, it seemed to make her worse. I still remember the time when she hit me with a frying pan, straight from the gas stove, with sausages in it as well. When she realised what she'd done, she became even madder. I'm sure that if I'd not managed to escape out of the house that day, she would have killed me. The sound of her key in the front door prompted my brother to escape upstairs to his bedroom, and my gran, looking apprehensive, she drew in a deep breath as she wiped her hands on her apron and then smoothed the tablecloth. This was it. The door opened and I heard the familiar sound of her shoes on the tiles. She walked past the dining room door and went into the kitchen. She had bags of shopping to put into the larder. Gran followed her. Would you like a cup of tea? She asked. I heard the kitchen door close and the murmur of voices starting softly, and gradually rising until the words were plain for all to hear. I'll kill him! Where is the little sod? The dining room door flew open, hitting the piano, and suddenly she filled the doorway. God, how big she'd grown. I was just about to stand up when she whacked me across the head, knocking me and the chair sideways to the floor. She grabbed the poker from the fireplace and with a chopping motion sliced my leg before I managed to crawl under the table. You bloody shit, I'll kill you, she spat at me. Phil, that's enough. Read the letter. My gran shouted from the safety of the hallway. Mind your own damn business. My mother rounded on her. She visibly shrank in terror as mother still had the poker raised and ready for action. I should add here that my dear gran was only 5 foot nothing in her slippers, and certainly no match for her daughter in stature or in temperament. My mother threw the poker into the fireplace and strode out into the hall with the letter in her hand. The front room door slammed. This room was kept for best and had a leather suite, a bureau and a polished oak glass cabinet with a locked cupboard in the centre. A piano, yes, another piano, and a carpet. The curtains were only drawn back on the weekends, for fear the sun would destroy the finish on the furniture. She stayed in there for what seemed like an eternity. Gran appeared with a cold flannel and a piece of homemade fudge, made a little face at me, and placed a finger on her lips, then rubbed butter in my wounds, another old country remedy, which, like salt, was used to cure all ills. If you couldn't rub it in, you drank it in hot water. The front room door opened, and my second withdrew to a neutral corner. Round 2. Mum, come in here, you might just as well read this too. She glared at me. He's bloody well welcome to you. He'd soon bring you back. I could see that she'd been crying, and all the colour had left her cheeks. What was she talking about? Hardly a week went by without her threatening to have me put in a home, or Borstal. Maybe my uncle had offered to look after me. Not very likely, as he valued his freedom too much. To my intense bewilderment and relief, nothing further was said. My mother went off to her evening job, cooking and washing up in a small cafe, which catered for businessmen and people working away from home. And without saying another word to me, she left. That meant I was safe until she returned about 10:30. I lay awake in my bedroom, my burning legs swollen and throbbing, listening for my mother's return. I shared this small back room with my brother. My mother had the larger room in the front, on the second floor. The stairs were bare board up here, so every sound was magnified and obvious. Much later I awoke to hear her slowly climb the stairs, stopping outside our door. My heart missed several beats. I pulled the covers over my head. The footsteps continued, and her door was unlocked and closed, and the key turned again, locking her in. She sat on the bed and I heard her kick off her shoes. I eventually stopped shaking and fell into a worried sleep. To be continued.